Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be providing an update to the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Now, remember, as long as we stay below this band, you are much better off assuming it is the bear market resistance band. And as long as we stay below it, Bitcoin remains in a bear market. I understand there's some subjectivity to the term bull market and bear market, and I understand the logic behind how can we call Bitcoin in a bear market when it's still trading at $39,000. For me, the reason I say a bear market is because we remain more or less below the bull market support band. But furthermore, we keep getting rejected by some key moving averages, right? We'll talk about those in a little bit. But as of this week, we have an update here on the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA. So they now range from 41.8K to 42.9K. So that is the line in the sand that we would like to get back above in order for us to resume some sense of bullishness. But remember, it doesn't mean anything if we can't hold it as support. And last week, if you just rewind the script, just about 7 days when we made a video, I said, look, guys, there's a good chance we could rally back up to the 20-week SMA during this most recent week. We talked about it being, like an 8 or 9% rally. And we actually saw that rally. We didn't finish the week off that high, but we did see that rally. But what did we say? It doesn't mean a thing if it doesn't have that sting, right? It doesn't mean anything if we're not getting back above the bull market support band and furthermore, again, holding it as support. There are times when you'll see Bitcoin get back above it, like we saw back in late March. But again, it doesn't mean anything, right? Because we didn't see any follow through. And then when we came back down, we just fell through it like it wasn't even there. So again, this has more of the characteristics of a bear market over a bull market. The reason I say that is because in a bull market, you would see things like getting above it and then rallying for a while and then coming back down to hold it as support. We also saw that back over here in September of 2021 when we fell back down to hold it as support as well after rallying through it in August. So that's usually a good sign of a bull market when you rally past it and then come back to hold it as support and then bounce, like we've seen many times in the past. But on the contrary, when you rally up to it and you get rejected off of it time after time after time, and then the occasional time that you might get above it, it's just instantly sold off. Well, it has to remind you of either late 2019, where we would rally and get rejected, or rally and then not hold it as support, or it has to remind you of 2018, where we would just, we would basically just sell off every time we got up to it, or sometimes we would make it slightly higher than it, but then it would just get sold off immediately. So, in my opinion, again, it is somewhat subjective. We still remain, in a bear market. And I know I've also said too that I think that in terms of people agreeing it's a bull market or a bear market, my thinking on this is that by the time the last bull calls it a bear market, that's when the bear market will be over. Okay, once they finally concede. When I look at these daily moving averages, like the 200-day SMA and stuff, it still looks like, again, like a typical move that you might see, like we've seen in the past, where you rally up to it and you just get immediately rejected by it. Okay, so we've been following this trend now for a while, so I wanted to update it. And actually, before I do that, I know this video is on Bitcoin, but I do want to take one moment to sneak in something about altcoins, okay? Now, the reason I wanted to say something about altcoins is because, and I've been saying this on the premium stuff for a while, for the last like 5 months, they are very, very risky, okay? If Bitcoin puts in a lower low, all right, so if it follows the same pattern that it followed in 2018, if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, so a low, a higher low, a higher low, also the rejection off the 200-day, if this happens, if this pattern plays out, you should know that is where the Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. Okay, so this same pattern, you can go over the Bitcoin dominance. You can see that, in fact, it happened. The same thing happened in June of 2018, right? We were at this same dominance level. You go over to Bitcoin, you see that it happened That happened in June of 2018 is when it put in a lower low. So I just want to remind you that, 90% of what I talk about on this channel is Bitcoin. Okay. And we talk about some other things as well. But when we're risk off, when markets are risk off, and when Bitcoin is finding resistance on some key levels like the 200-day, like the 20-week, etc., you have to understand that the risk on altcoins is a lot higher than when Bitcoin is above those levels and holding them as support. Okay, so just understand that. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not offering financial advice, but you need to understand that the risk remains high as long as we're constantly flirting with potentially putting in a lower low. It hasn't happened yet, right? And there's always a chance that might not happen. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the market has to play out one way or the other. I just want you to recognize that if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, that is typically where you see alt Bitcoin valuations take a big hit. Okay, so try to keep that in mind. Now, our resistance band, as I said before, it ranges. It's a pretty tight range, but it ranges from around 41.8 to 42.9. So about $1,000 range there or so. But keep in mind that even if we rally up to it like we did this past week, I mean, if you remember, last week also started off pretty bad because we initially dipped and then we went up later. If we go back up again, remember, we have these key levels. And now it's around 41.8 to 42.9. So if we rally up $3,000 or $4,000, who cares, right? No one's going to even roll over in their bed for that at this point. You need to see some type of decisive change to the structure. Decisive. Because until that happens, there's going to be a lot of stress being continued to put on this support line, this imaginary line that I have to imagine everyone and their moms are watching at this point. And you could already argue that it's starting to break down. Okay, so the reason why, I mean, a lot of times when everyone watches something like this, it ultimately does break. Just, I mean, if history is any indication, a lot of times when everyone's watching some type of trend line like this, I mean, eventually it breaks, which I don't really think is a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing to break and then go into some other pattern so then people can watch that, because a lot of times when this sort of stuff happens, we normally do see it eventually break down. But let's see what happens here. I mean, I think that, as I've said before, market remains bearish, and it's likely going to continue to remain bearish as long as we're watching the dollar go through this fairly strong uptrend. And do remember too, if you switch this over to the Heiken Ashi candles, we're looking at a pretty nice downtrend here again. Looking at it on the 2-week, so if you look at it on the 2-week, you can see a fairly long downtrend for a while, hesitation for a little bit. We've seen that type of stuff also, okay, back over here in 2018 as well. So if we put in a lower low, this is what I want you to, and again, it might not even happen. Like, I mean, there's a chance it might not happen. And if it does happen, it might not even be this week. But if it does, what I think people should look for is a bounce off of this level. Okay. So if we put in a lower low, I don't think it would go that much lower. This is my, again, maybe perhaps somewhat ignorant opinion, but my guess is that we would see some type of nice bounce, probably back above 40K. I mean, to be completely honest, like if we drop back down to 30K or 29K or something, there's a good chance we could actually just bounce right back up to the 40K level and then come to fight the 200-day estimate again at around 40K and then try to break through. But in the short term, I think we have to be patient here and wait to see, is Bitcoin going to put in a lower low? Is if it does, then know that all Bitcoin valuations are likely going to bleed, and therefore the Bitcoin dominance is more likely to go up. But again, we'll continue following the bull market support band. I mean, it still could be a little while before we actually muster up the strength to get back above it in a sustainable way where we can actually hold it as support. Okay, we might just need some time to let Bitcoin work itself out wherever it's going to go, and then for us to finally hold it as support. But I think that's basically where we are. I know it's not necessarily the best news to say. I mean, it's not the best news to sort of understand that we are, as we've said many times over the last few months, that these are very much bear market conditions. Rallies continue to get sold off. Resistance levels remain resistance levels, and support levels tend to fall through. So it has the characteristics of a bear market. If it talks like one, if it walks like one, you might as well just call it what it is, right? So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. We also do have Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.